their group. So due to the sheer actuality of the topic, we decided to focus our project on refugees. And, well, what are the problems that refugees face when they come to our cities? So first, they face the problem of the language. Secondly, they face cultural differences in form of prejudice, etc. And thirdly, they have a lack of opportunities, especially in meeting in public spaces and also in the possibilities to study, for example. And this all leads to a kind of isolation of the refugees from our society. And we quickly realized that if we are able to solve this problem of isolation, that this would have a beneficial factor on all these facts I just mentioned. So maybe let's look at a typical group of refugees. So we have children coming to our countries. Those are able to go to school at a certain point, and through that they are integrated back to our society. We have men coming to our countries. They are maybe able to work, or at least they have to go to federal bureaus and agencies in order to apply for different things. And in that sense, also their isolation is limited. But what about women? Women have limited work opportunities, and they face the worst isolation in our societies. So maybe some facts. 50% of the world's refugees at this moment are women. Only 4% of UN projects are targeted to this group. 80% of refugee women in Europe have reported that they live in fear of abuse and aggression. And 1 in 5 refugee women have experienced sexual violence. So what could a solution be? Let's look at the trip of Amena, a Syrian refugee. So as you can see, we decided for our project to found a so-called Ladies Hub. It is a safe place where women can help and empower one another, where we have local women and refugee women interact and intermingle with one another. We would integrate a variety of activities, maybe also adapted to the city's needs. One being language lessons to address the problematic of language differences. We would have sporting facilities and cooking opportunities so that they can do something together. We also would have medical and legal advice programs offered every day. But the problem remains, how do we empower these women? This is why we decided to create a beauty or hair salon in the hub. We would employ a local licensed hairdresser who brings along experience, but also has the capability of instructing other women, locals, and refugees. The customers of these hair salons would be homeless women, refugee women, and local women from around the corner. And the payment would be on a voluntary basis, so this means that the women would pay as much as they are able or willing to. Through this, we would empower the women working there, giving them a purpose and also something that they can give back to society. On the other hand, we would help the customers of this shop, especially the homeless and the refugee women, to empower themselves, to have more self-esteem, and to feel beautiful again. So in this sense, we would face isolation or integration in 3 steps. First, on an individual basis, meaning that that we face these women or address these women from their homes and bring them together in these hubs. Second, on a collective basis, meaning that we bring together refugee women and local women. And thirdly, we would integrate these women into the society. Through this, we would create a new self-esteem, a new unity of women, and we would help the whole system of integration. This will not only change the women, but it will also change the families, as the women bring back the things they learned to their children and to their husbands. In this sense, we create a new welcoming city which can be used, or possibility which can be used by us and by the refugees in various ways. And in the end, our dream overall would be that this ladies' hub would help the struggle of forming a new welcoming city for each and every single one of us. Thank you.
Our challenge was to increase the welcoming potentials of our cities for precarious newcomers. And as the previous group, we decided to focus on refugees. Currently, there's 82,000 refugees living in Switzerland. And in 2017, there were 18,000 additional applications. Now, think about the situation a refugee is in. Put yourself in his shoes. What kind of challenges does he face? You're in a new environment. You don't know the language. You don't know anyone. You're completely isolated. There might be prejudice, and you'll feel alone and maybe experience fear. And as the previous group, we try to find the common cause of most of these issues, and we identified a lack of communication. And therefore, we tried to increase the communication between the local population and the refugees, because through an increase of communication, we wanted to further the integration of these refugees. So now we thought about, okay, how can we increase this communication and what is the best target audience? And we decided to focus on children. Why children, you might ask? And it's because children should go to school, and therefore they can experience a already established network of interaction between parents, teachers, and students. And this is an extremely powerful network. However, the children have certain advantages compared to the parents. They lack prejudice and are very open-minded, and they go to school whereas the parents don't. So the parents don't have a space to interact, and maybe they think in a more strict way. And that's why we wanted to increase the communication between children, but also, through the children, increase the communication between the parents and dissolve this artificial barrier which hinders the communication of the parents. Now, how do you do this? And we thought about, okay, children, they have a place where they can go, but the parents don't. And therefore, we decided to implement a new third place. So what is a third place? It's basically very similar to this ladies' hub the previous group talked about. A third place is not the first place, that's home, nor is it the second place, that will be work, but it's another place where you can just have a good time and be at ease. And the usual school cycle only consists of the first and the second place, where the child basically circulates between these two. And we wanted to break this conventional cycle by introducing a third place. And this third place means that, for example, after school, the teacher goes to this third place with the students, and this third place is a safe space where the normal rules of school and the hierarchy doesn't apply, where children and teachers are equal, and even the parents can interact with them. So we thought about, okay, how do we design this third place? And we thought about the brain with its more creative and more rational hemisphere, but they're still connected. And that's why we designed the third place to have a more rational part and a more creative part. And in the creative part, you can really be yourself and express yourself. And in the rational part, you maybe just be a bit quiet and more self-aware. And these two places right now might seem very different, but they share a very important thing, and that is communication. In both these places, children, parents, and teachers can communicate. And probably you're thinking right now of verbal communication, because right now I'm communicating with you. I'm speaking to you, and you can hear the words coming out of my mouth. And, of course, this verbal communication is very important, because through activities like peer tutoring or just talking to the local population, the refugee children and also the parents can integrate much more easily into the environment because they learn the language in a non-pressure way. But there actually is another, much more ubiquitous way of communication. It actually makes up 63 to 93% of how we communicate. And that is non-verbal communication. Why is non-verbal communication so important and everywhere? It's because you simply cannot not do it. If you talk to someone and look them in the face and they might raise their eyebrow or make a funny face, and you immediately know that something's off. And non-verbal communication has a distinct advantage over verbal communication. The language barrier completely disappears. And that means the local children and the refugee children, they can interact with each other without having to understand each other perfectly. They can build trust through team-building activities or through sports or painting. It can really be anything. But what we also want to focus on is that this third place, it doesn't have to be a building. And it doesn't have to be really predefined. It can be very much anything. It could be a place where the children just play, but it should be an inclusive space for the entire community, so that it opens up after school and is really porous. So that the school, and especially this third place, which should be independent from the school, can become the new center and the heart of the community, where everyone can come together and have a great time, do food sharing, do other fun stuff, I don't know, maybe even karaoke. And that way, we believe that we can increase the interaction and physical connection of the local population and the refugees, and therefore increase the integration through communication in our new proposed third place. Thanks a lot.